Okay, what's up? We're back and we're going to hopefully be finishing this series up here. So we're going to be doing our hotbar today. And this is all going to be made as an option on here. So you can click a check mark if you want the hotbar or if you don't want the hotbar. So it's probably worth just putting it in just in case you ever do want to use it. At least it's there. You can click a checkbox and have it. So I've already went ahead and downloaded some static meshes in here. So I just have some tools. I have a hammer, screwdriver, and a wrench. So I'm just going to be using that for an example. And those are going to be my hotbar items. And then I made some thumbnails in Photoshop for them. So I haven't set the items up, so we're going to do that. I'll set one up and then I'll just quickly do the other two. So before we set them up, I'm going to go into the inventory, go into the items, and we're going to open up the BP base item because we're now going to want to add a new default in here. And I said this before when we first started making the system, but you will add more defaults as your game progresses. You're going to find out that you might need something along the way. So we're going to add another default in here and we're just going to call it is hotbar. And I'm going to compile and save that. And then by default, I want that to be false. So we're going to check any item manually that we want to be a hotbar item. So with that done, now I can go into my items and we can just copy any of these items here. So I can just copy that water and I can just call this my hammer, my screwdriver, and my wrench. If we go into wrench, I'm just going to pick the wrench mesh we have, pick the wrench icon I made. I'm going to give it a stack size of 1. The interact text will be pick up wrench, display name. I'm not going to do anything for a use. We could just put that to our default. Since this is a hotbar item, we're not going to want to use it. If we click on it anyway, we're not going to get anything from it. When we click on it, it's going to go to our hotbar, and then when it goes to our hotbar, it'll be equipped and it'll fire its own equipped code. So if that's a weapon or armor or something like that, you can then do your equip code from that. So it's not going to have the typical use that the other ones have. We're not going to want it to switch into any other items, so we're not going to check that. We'll leave the alt item as BP base item, and then we're just going to mark it is hotbar true, and then compile and save that. So I'm just going to do the same thing for the other two items I have, and I'll be back. Okay, so I got my items set up. I just threw a second table in here. I threw my BP world item down, and now we can pick the new items we have. So I'm going to throw the hammer out. Just going to copy that, make one the screwdriver. I'll copy that and make the last one the wrench. So now these are set up as hotbar items. So I'm going to go into the widgets folder that's in our inventory, and we're going to create a new widget. So we're going to make a user interface widget blueprint, user widget, and I'm going to call that WBP hotbar, and then we can open that up. And then inside of here, we're just going to do a size box, and I'm going to click on that size box, and we're going to do desired on screen. We're going to override the width and height, and I'm just going to use a size that I found works during testing here, and that's about 641 by 137. And what this is going to do is give me 6 slots in here. So this is going to be big enough so that we can fit 6 slots in there. You can make yours however big you want, and the same kind of technique that I showed in the storage at I think the end of the storage video, where you can add your inventory slots to this and actually see how big or how many you can fit in here. So I'm going to drop a border in here. And we're going to be setting that to black with an alpha of 0.5. And then in the border, I'm going to do a horizontal box. So we're going to drop that in. So we're going to compile and save that and add that to our main HUD. So I'm going to open up the main HUD. We're going to go to user created and we're going to look for WBP hotbar. We're going to drag that onto our canvas panel, select it, do size to content, and I'm going to do collapsed. Now you can set this up however you want, but I only want the hotbar to come on when my inventory and storage is there. I don't want this to always be on. So I'm just going to set it to be collapsed. And then I want it to be in the center of my screen. So I'm going to come up to the anchor and I'm going to click the one that has the bottom here, but I'm going to hold Shift and Control and then click that. And that will anchor it to the bottom. And then I'm just going to lift it up a little bit on its Y. I'll put it like somewhere around here just to get it up a little bit. With that there, we're set to collapsed. It's set to variable. So we're going to compile and save that. And I just want to check something. So if we go into the hotbar, we want to make sure that this horizontal box is set to variable. And then let's go to our inventory, and we're going to go to show player inventory. So we're going to add this to get shown. We're going to do the same thing that we basically did for our storage window. So I'm just going to drag this back at a little bit of room. I'm going to drag those down a little, and I'm going to copy the select and the set visibility, and we'll paste in another one. So we can't use those existing ones because this is going to be set up a little bit different. So I'm just going to move some of this down. I'm not disconnecting anything here. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. All right, so I just cleaned that up a little bit. So we're going to drag off this main HUD here, and now we're going to drag out and we're going to get our hotbar. And we're going to plug that into the target of this set visibility. And now for the condition here, we want to do an AND. So I'm going to do an AND Boolean here. We want to make sure that we grab our show coming off the show pin here and not the storage. So this wire here goes to my show. So I'm going to plug the show into one of these pins, and we need to add a hotbar variable to our inventory too. So I'm going to just make a Boolean in here is hotbar, and we're going to plug that in like that. So now for this to be true, we need to have hotbar enabled, and we need to be showing our inventory. So we're going to compile and save that. Now before I enable it, I just want to kind of organize some of this stuff in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come down to the should collapse here, and I'm going to come over to category, and I'm just going to say options. And you can see that just puts it in its own window there. So I'm going to drag our main inventory Boolean up to that options folder. I'm going to drag capacity up, I'm going to drag hotbar up, and that's all I'm going to put in there. So now if I compile and save that and we go into our player, we select that inventory component. Now you can see that we just made this options folder here. So now we have our main inventory, capacity, should collapse, hotbar. So I'm going to check hotbar now. And then we're going to compile and save that. And let's see if our hotbar will get displayed here. So there we go. So our hotbar is displayed. It's where we want to. We don't have any slots in there yet. We're going to take care of that now. So we're in our main inventory component, and we're going to have to add something to the graph here. And then what I think is going to work best is if we just put a sequence node in here. So I'm going to drag off this then one pin, and we're going to put a branch down. And then I'm going to put the is hotbar into that condition. So if we're not using the hotbar, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to come down, come out of false, and that's going to be it. But if we do want to use the hotbar, then we're going to initialize it. So I'm going to add another variable in here, and I'm just going to call this HB for hotbar item. And we're going to make this of the same type as our other items so we can pass stuff back and forth. So we're going to look for item struct. We're going to right click to make that a array. So this is going to be its own inventory for the hotbar here. When we come off the sequence pin, we're going to come down to this branch. If hotbar is true, we want to grab our hotbar item. So make sure you grab hotbar item, not your regular item. And we're going to drag off and do resize. And for me, I'm going to make my hotbar 6 slots. So I'm going to put 6 in there. So I'm going to drag off this hotbar item, put a reroute node, and then drag off and do a for each loop. We're going to connect up that execution. Then we're going to drag off our array again, put another reroute, and do set array element. Connect that up. We're going to split that structure pin on here. And we want to plug in the array index into the index and the index down here. And where it says BP base item, we want to make that the default BP base item. Right now it's just saying select class. So I just want to make that BP base item, and that'll be an empty slot for us. And then make sure quantity is set to 0. And we're going to do a reference to self on here for the inventory. And then we can hit C to comment this, and we can say initialize hotbar. Now we need to update it. So we're going to go into the update code that we made, update inventory. And this is going to be pretty easy. So we're just going to come off of the true here. So if main inventory is true, we're going to do another sequence here. So we have our player update right here. I want to plug that into the then one pin on that sequence. So the update we're doing for our hotbar is going to be pretty much the same thing as our storage. So I'm actually just going to copy this, and we can just paste this on the top here. And then I'll change this from storage update to hotbar update. I'm going to delete the wrap box and that storage window variable, and we're going to drag off main HUD, and we're going to get hotbar, and then we're going to drag off hotbar, and we're going to get, it should be the horizontal box. So then we're going to plug that into our clear children, I'm going to make sure we connect this execution pin up too before I forget. So this then 0 pin is going to go into here. And actually, before we do that too, we need to add a branch in here. So I'm going to slide all this down, and I'm actually going to run this into a branch first. And we're going to take the is hotbar out, plug that in, because we only want to do this if the hotbar is true, meaning if we're using the hotbar. If we're not using it, then we don't want to update it. So I'm going to delete that item, and we're going to plug in the hotbar item. So we're going to get our hotbar item array, plug that into our for each loop, and then we just have to change this because that's adding child to wrap box. So we now need to add child to horizontal box. So I'm going to delete the little reroute, delete this add child to wrap box here. We can drag off our horizontal box and do add child to horizontal box. And then we can plug this in here. We can take the return value of the create widget and plug that into the content there. And then we should be all set here. I'll just clean this up a bit. And one more thing we got to do in here too is just take this return node off of this completed. So now with this setup, we should be able to have our hotbar updating the slots here. So let's compile and save that. So now if we play, we open it up, you can see that we have our slots being populated in here. And we can pick our hotbar items up, but we can't move them yet. So let's work on that now. And one thing I want to do real quick too before I forget, I want to add a variable in here and just call this is hotbar as well. And I want to make sure that this is instance editable, exposed on spawn. And before I forget, I want to go back to the inventory really quick in this update inventory function. So where we create this inventory slot, I'm going to click on all these nodes. There should be 4 of them. So we should have one in our hotbar, the create WBP inventory slot widget. We should have one there. We should have the 2 on the player and then the 1 on the storage. And then if I refresh, so now you see we have the is hotbar exposed variable on there. So the only one that we're going to want to do this with is on our hotbar update. We just want to check that here. So then the inventory slot is going to know if it's in the hotbar or not. So I just wanted to do that before I forget. We'll jump back into the slot now. And on our button, click here. And we're going to have to do an AND Boolean in here because there is something that I want to make sure is in here. So I'm going to drag off where this control pressed is going in. I'm going to drag off that. We're going to do an AND Boolean on that. And we're going to plug in our control pressed. And then I want to grab the hotbar variable we just made, drag off that and do a not Boolean. And we're going to plug this in to the AND as well, because I don't want to be able to drop stuff from the hotbar. I want to have to move it from the hotbar back to the inventory to drop it. So we're just going to do that check there. So if that is true, so if this is not a hotbar slot and we press control, then we're going to want to drop. So we're going to do a little bit of work in here. It's not going to be much, but one thing I'm going to do just to clean this up a little bit is instead of calling the drop interface right here, I'm just going to make a custom event, and this will just help clean it up a bit. So I'm just going to say drop, and I'm going to put that drop event right above the right click. And then instead of us calling this interface and dragging these wires up here, I can just come right off of true and just call drop. And we want the call function drop right here. So this will just be a little cleaner. So now this will call this drop here. And then if we drag off this inventory pin here, and we look for drop, we should see drop message. And then we can plug that in. And then these 2 functions here can share this. So we can plug our item in here. And then that will just clean that up a little bit more. So now when we drop, we're calling that, which is going to fire that, pass in the inventory and the item. And this might get a little messy until we clean it up. I just want to keep stuff kind of organized here. So I'm going to do something like this. So if we come up here, we have a branch. If control's pressed, we're going to drop. If control's not pressed, we're going to come down and see if we're clicking from main inventory or not. If that's going to be false, then we're just going to go to storage. But if this is true, we're going to have to add something in the middle of here now. So I'm going to get a little bit of room here. We're going to put a branch coming off of this check for main inventory. We're going to grab the item in here. We're going to break it. And then we just need the BP base item and our inventory. So we'll hide the rest. From the BP base item, we're going to get the defaults. And then we want to see if this is a hotbar item. So we're going to take our hotbar from the defaults and plug it in. And then we can hide unconnected pins here. And then we're going to take this use from slot. That's going to now go into our false. I'm also going to delete this item because we have it right here. Then we're going to drag off the inventory pin from the break here, and we're going to plug that into the target for the use. And we're going to take that down to the target for the storage. And then same thing for the item. I'm going to drag out, put a pin, connect that to use, connect that to storage. And I'm going to make one more custom event here. And I'm just going to call this hotbar. Okay, so we just have a custom event hotbar. So now I'm going to drag out a true, and I'm just going to call that hotbar event. Okay, and then I'm going to take this hotbar custom event we made. I'm just going to put that over here for now. And there we go. We should be done with that now. So now when hotbar gets called, I'm going to run that into a branch. And we want to see if this is a hotbar slot or not. So I'm going to plug the hotbar variable into this branch. And we got to make two quick functions in our inventory for this. So I'm going to compile and save what we have here. I'm going to go to the inventory component. And we're going to add two functions in here. So we're going to say add to hotbar, and we want to give this an input of our item, and we'll make that of the type item struct. And then we're going to add another one saying remove from hotbar, and give that one an input of item. Make sure that's set to item struct, and then we can go back to our slot, and now we can put these on our branch. So what we can do is just grab our item out, drag off and break it. And then we just need the inventory here, so I can hide everything else. So now if I drag off this inventory, I should be able to add to hotbar. And if hotbar is true, that means we're left clicking on a hotbar item in our hotbar. That means if that's true, we want to remove it. So the add is going to come down to our false here. So we're going to plug this in to our false. Okay, we're going to run the item to it. And then we're going to drag off this inventory pin again, and we're going to say remove from hotbar, and just do the same thing. We're going to plug that in, plug in our item, and we should be good here too. So this top stuff here, this is for initializing. This is when the slot first gets made. So I'm just going to hit C, comment it, and I'm just going to say initialize slot. And then this here is going to be our left click. So I'm going to comment, and we'll just say left click. And then this stuff here is going to be secondary use. So that's going to be hotbar and dropping. So we'll comment that, and I'm just going to call that secondary use. And then this is our hover. So let's compile and save that. And then we're going to go into our inventory. And now let's do these last two functions here. So we have add to hotbar and remove from hotbar. So when we add an item to hotbar, we're going to have to loop through and find an open spot. Now the hotbar items aren't going to be stackable there. It's going to just be one item for the hotbar. So I'm going to grab the hotbar item array that we have, and we're going to drag off, and we're going to do a for each loop with break. And then we're going to connect that in. We're going to drag off the array element, and we're going to break it. And then we just need the BP base item here because we just want to look for an empty item. So then I'm going to drag off that, do an equals to, and then pick our BP base item. So we're going to do a branch on that, connect up our condition, and we're going to need a local variable in here to store this. So I'm going to add a new variable, and I'm just going to call this L_index. We don't need an array, so I'm going to right click and change that to an integer. And I'm going to compile and save that. And then by default, I want to set that to be -1. So then if we loop through our hotbar array and we find an item that's equal to BP base item, we're going to set this local index to be the array index that we just found. So we're going to take that over and plug that in here. And then if we do find an index here, we're going to break. So we're going to drag off that and break this loop. Now I'm going to come off completed, and we're going to do a branch in here because we want to check that index now. So this local index, we set it to -1. If we find an empty spot in our hotbar, then we're going to set that to be the index number of that empty spot. So the index number has to be 0 through whatever our highest index slot is. So 0 through 5. So we want to do a check and see if that's still -1. If that's still -1, then we don't have any space in our hotbar. So I'm going to grab that local index, and I'm going to just do a check to see if we're greater than or equal to 0. So if we're greater than or equal to 0, that means we found a spot. That means we found an index we can put this in. So if we did find a spot, we want to grab our hotbar item array, drag that out, and we want to do a get, and we're going to get a reference. And then the index we're going to get is going to be this local index we have here. And then we're going to drag off that, and we're going to do a set members. So this is going to get plugged into our true, and we just need the BP base item and the quantity. And the BP base item and quantity that we're getting is going to be this item here that we're passing in. So instead of dragging that all the way across here, I'm just going to right click and do get item. And if we go all the way down, we should have our item there. Then we can break that. And then we just need our BP base item and our quantity. So we can hide the other ones. We can feed these into our set members. And I'm going to make one more function here. And this is going to be similar to the use function. So we're not going to do anything in here. So I'm going to call this equip, unequip, hotbar. And I'm just going to give this 2 inputs. So we're going to pass in our item. And I'm also going to give this an input of a Boolean, and I'm going to say equipped. So we're going to change that to a Boolean, and I want to put that up top. And then I'm just going to drag out and put a return in here. Now, this is going to be the code that's going to fire whenever you equip or unequip a hotbar item. So this is going to be up to you to use however you want in your game. We're not really going to do anything with it. I'm going to come off the equipped and just put a branch. And then just to see if it works, we're just going to do a print up here, equipped, and then we'll put a branch coming off the false here and just say unequipped. We're not going to do anything in here. I just wanted to add it so it's in here. So when we add to hotbar, now we can drag that equip, unequip hotbar out. This is our adding to hotbar, so we want to check equipped. And we're going to run our item there so we know what item it is. And then I'm just going to grab the remove item. We're going to plug that in. And we want to do our update widget. And then we can return out of here. So we have to plug in this item to that. So don't forget to plug in your item. And then we're going to update inventory and return out. So this should add the item to our hotbar. And then we can add a comment to this if we want here. And say check for HB spot. So we can do something like that, and then we can comment this and say add to HB spot. Now if the spot is full, if we didn't find any spots here, then that means we have no room to put it in the hotbar. So what we're going to do is just kick it out like the other items we have. So I'm going to get player character. And we're going to use that inventory full function we made. So we're going to call inventory full message, and we're going to plug that into our false here. So after we kick the item out into the world, we're going to remove the item from our inventory. So we can drag that in and then just do an update and return out. So if our inventory is full, we want to pass that item out. And then the item we're going to remove is this. So I'm going to put a reroute right here and just feed this down. So this will be for if we're full here, HB full. So that's going to be our add to hotbar here. So let's see if that is going into our hotbar now. So we're going to jump in, we're going to pick these items up, and then if we click on them, they go into our hotbar. And you can see that we're firing that equipped code that we made there too. So now it should be easy to remove them, but I want to just check one thing first here. I want to make sure it's going to kick the item out too. So I'm just going to make quantity 3. Well, we'll just do like quantity 6 right here. That'll work. So if we pick up that gives us 6 screwdrivers. So now if I add these in here, if I was to go and try and pick this wrench up, well, actually it's going to work when I go to equip it. So if we go to equip it, it kicks it out into the world here. And then we can pick it back up, but we can't equip it unless we unequip something else first. So let's go handle the last thing we have to do. And that's going to be remove from hotbar. And this should be simple. So we're just going to grab the hotbar item. We're going to drag off and do get a reference. We're going to break this item coming in. And we just need the index and the inventory. So I'm going to pass the index into this get. We're going to drag off and do set members. And we're just going to expose the base item and the quantity. And all we want to do is just set it to be nothing. So we want to set our BP base item to be BP base item and quantity 0. And then coming off our inventory pin here, we're going to drag off and we're going to call a process item. And then I'm going to grab this item coming in and we're just going to put a couple reroutes. We're going to pass this item down here and throw it into our process item. So this is going to be unequipping it. So we can grab that unequip hotbar function that we made. We're going to leave equip set to false, and then we'll pass in our item. So now when we unequip it, this is our print. So we have our print in here for unequipping. This is where you would put your code again for whatever you want to have happen. So we'll just fire that. We'll get our print and then we'll return out. And let's compile and save that. So let's just make sure everything is saved. We're going to go in. That's still set to 6 screwdrivers, but so I'm just going to change that screwdriver here before I forget. We're going to put that back to 1. Let's go in, pick these up. So now we can equip them to hotbar and we get the equip print. And then if we click on them in our hotbar, we get the unequipped. And we can still throw these into our storage. Throw them into our hotbar. So now we have a working hotbar here. So whatever items we tag as hotbar in their defaults, this will now be all set up and working. And let's just hold control and we can drop those as well. So there's one thing I want to check, and that's if we go into the player and we select our inventory here, we should be able to uncheck hotbar now. So if we don't want hotbar, we uncheck that. And now if we go in, pick items up, we no longer have our hotbar displayed. So that is now an option that you can pick to use or not use. It works good. It functions good. I think that's going to be the end of the inventory series, but if anything comes up with it, if there's any bugs or anything like that that I want to improve on, change, fix, anything like that, I will be adding to this. But I think that's going to conclude the inventory series. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.